How's it going, guys? Welcome back into my YouTube channel. This is Aaron Ryan back with you once again. Alright, so I've played a lot of video games. You probably played a lot of video games as well. But as you know, we all start at the original versions of games, don't we? And then eventually we branch out and we try out different versions of the same game as well on different systems as well. So today I wanted to come on here and talk to you about video games, especially video games that got ported over to different systems as well, especially handhelds as well. And I think that's the reason why I think they're worth checking out still today in 2023 as well. So the first game I want to go over, guys, at the minute is Pilotwings. Pilotwings actually came out for the Super Nintendo back in 1991 over in America for the first time. And actually it actually debuted over in Japan in 1990, but it didn't arrive over here in Europe until 1992. And in 1997 as well is when it came over here in Europe as Pilotwings 64. And as I didn't play much of Pilotwings for the Super Nintendo back in the day, I did rent it out. I thought it was very, very hard to play. And it is a decent game, but until I got to Nintendo 64 Christmas 1997 and I came across Pilotwings 64, and this blew me away completely. Something about the controls in the Super Nintendo version is completely different to the controls in the Nintendo 64 version. I think the Nintendo 64 version is far more superior than the Super Nintendo version. Not forgetting the soundtrack as well. The soundtrack to Pilotwings 64 is amazing, especially the hang glider stage. I think the hang glider music is my all-time favorite music in that game itself, and of course as well the Birdman music as well. Overall though, Pilotwings 64 still holds up great in 2023, and if you haven't played Pilotwings 64 and you've only played the Super Nintendo version, where have you been? Now, Pilotwings 64 does get very, very hard as you go along as well, especially these hang glider missions as well. You have that chicken dive level, which is a big pain to do as well. If you don't know what you're doing here, you're going to crash and you're going to burn. But going back to the Super Nintendo version as well, the controls are a bit janky here. These are not the kind of controls I like in the game. Don't get me wrong, the game is very, very good. It is enjoyable to play, but it is very frustrating. But until you hold the Nintendo 64 controller in your hand and play Pilotwings 64, you're going to feel a big relief. You're going to say, wow, actually this feels better. I remember Pilotwings 64 back here in Ireland back in 97. It was like about 65-70 pound at the time, Irish pounds back then, and that was quite expensive. I had to kind of beg and plead my dad and my mom to get that game for me, and my parents were like, that game is so expensive, what's the point in getting that right now, so wait, like they said, wait a couple of months for it to go down in price, and it didn't. All these N64 games back in Europe were so expensive. I'm not sure about the States now, but over here in Europe, these games were very, very expensive. But you know what, eventually you'll get the game and you'll be like, wow, that's actually the best £60 I've ever spent on a video game before, because the controls are good, the music is good, the gameplay is good, it's a very enjoyable and relaxing game to play. Pilotwings 64, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you prefer Pilotwings for the Super Nintendo, or do you actually prefer Pilotwings 64? Let me know. Alright, so our next game right now is Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap for the Sega Master System, but the version as well, there's a different version altogether as well that has a whole different new look to it as well, and it's called Dragon's Curse for the TurboGrafx 16 as well. Now, who doesn't like Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap? The music, I have to start the music. The music in this game is amazing as well, okay? The music is absolutely amazing, but in the TurboGrafx version as well, the music is, I think they added a cherry on top to the music as well. The music is still good, but it's they kind of remixed it up a bit, and it kind of sounds a bit more better as well than the Master System version. But this version in particular, the sprites look a bit different as well. The whole game has more or less the same graphics as the Master System, but the sprites are a bit different as well. The game follows a similar storyline as well to Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap as well. Me personally, I never owned a TurboGrafx 16. I never had one. I never played one, and I came across this game later on after I had Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap for the Sega Master System back in the day, but I never knew that there'd be other versions of that game as well. But I came across Dragon's Curse and I was like, wow, okay, this has the same music. The music is really catchy still and stuff like that. The levels are similar as well and that, but it does look nicer. But yeah, Dragon's Curse, I spent a couple of times playing this, and I found the game at start, Wonder Boy 3, a very confusing game for me. But until I looked up some walkthroughs as well, what to do, what character does what as well, each character you morph into as well. They all have different like obstacles to do and go through different courses in the game as well. And once you kind of figure out like the kind of road you need to go in as well, like what character does what as well, you have the game in your hand right there. But it's actually refreshing as well to actually play a game, right, that you like grew up playing, right? It has all the things you like in the game, and then you see another version on a different system as well. The music sounds more enhanced and everything. The graphics look a bit more better as well. And you're like, wow, this is nice to see. A game I actually love. I love playing, and you see a new version of it as well. It's kind of similar as well to Alex Kidd in Miracle World, right? And then Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX came out, and you saw the graphics, and the graphics are amazing in it. But I found the game DX more harder for some weird reason. The bosses and everything are changing it as well. There's more kind of stuff to do to the bosses. But yeah, overall, like Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap will go down like as one of the best Sega Master System games, like, you know. And again, it's behind Alex Kidd and Miracle World as well. You have these kind of games, like games that were so popular and then they're ported over to another system, like they're going to stay that good as well and very popular. Alright, so I'm going to move on to a fighting game right here as well. I grew up playing a lot of PlayStation 1 games as well, especially the Tekken franchise as well. Tekken 1, 2 and 3 for the PlayStation 1, but there's also a version as well, okay, on the Game Boy Advance called Tekken Advance. Now, the first thing you're going to probably say to yourself is, okay, hang on, right, Tekken on the PlayStation 1 is a very powerful game. It's a powerful system, so how can such a small little handheld thing hold such a powerful game like that? So like looking on the screen, like the game does look very familiar to the PlayStation 1, except it's more pixelated because obviously the game is made for such a smaller screen. But I have to say, like, this holds up very, very well, you know, like this does hold up really well for a Game Boy Advance back in 2001. Like, who would have thought, right, back in 1996, was it 95 over in America when the PlayStation 1 came out? It was 96, 97 over here in Europe. But anyway, who would have thought back in the mid-90s that in a couple of years later time we can play the same game, well, not maybe the same game, but the same kind of game, as you know what I mean, on such a small screen, and you can hold it in your hand and take it anywhere you want. I never would have thought that. But anyway, like Tekken Advance, get back to that game anyway as well. Like the music is fantastic in this. Like for such, as I say, like such a small system, the music is phenomenal in this. One of my very closest friends as well, he does a lot of streaming on his Facebook, Kick, and his YouTube page, and I'm going to give a shout out to him. I may as well give a shout out to him. He's West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. He's now on YouTube as well. He does a lot of good streams as well. And he's actually attempting a lot of speedruns of this game in particular. And if you do want to catch Tekken Advance, you know, watch it being played live by my good friend Clive. He plays it a lot, and do check out that as well. Like he's trying to do these speedruns, and the game is good, and he's doing a very good job at it. But yeah, Tekken Advance, I think it's up there. It's up there as worth checking out, I have to admit. Like the gameplay is not going to feel the same way to the PlayStation 1, of course. You know, like it's ported for a smaller system as well, but it is more or less the same once you get used to the controls as well. I would recommend it, you know, like Tekken fans, you're gonna love it, you know, like it is up there as one I would definitely recommend you check out right now. Now, I am a huge Mario fan, okay, yeah, I am a big Mario player. I've played Mario. I can continue on for the next 5 hours saying that, but yeah, I played a lot of Mario back in the day, back in the 90s when I got the Super Nintendo, the NES, you name it, okay? And I have to say, Super Mario Bros. 3, a great game. I actually, in particular, grew up with the Super Mario All-Stars version. I didn't get an NES until a bit later on after the Super Nintendo. I know it was a bit weird, I kind of got an NES a bit later, but yeah, Super Mario 3 was actually the only game I owned for the NES. But until I got a Game Boy Advance in 2001, and I came across Super Mario Advance 4, and I had Super Mario 3 on it, and I was like, wait a minute, Super Mario 3 on the Game Boy Advance, you can bring it anywhere you want, you can go anywhere you want, and I can play Mario 3 all day. Okay, that sounds interesting and that's cool, yeah. But then looking at this actually looks amazing. Like for a Game Boy Advance, this looks good. This actually really holds up well, and it has all this soundtrack, and the sound effects Mario does in it as well is amazing. I thought this is actually cool. I was like, hang on, why didn't the Super Mario All-Stars carry these sound effects, like when Mario collected a mushroom or when he does all these cool jumps and stuff like that? Why didn't they add that sound effect into the Mario All-Stars version? Like, I think Super Mario 3 would be probably the most popular Mario game of all time. Super Mario World will be behind it, and number 2, Mario 1 probably number 3, but Mario 3 I think just blew the world up. It's just like, wow, holy, you know, this, like when Mario 3 came out, everyone was like, wow, this is amazing, you know, like you have an open kind of map and everything like that compared to 1 and Mario 2 and that, you know. But yeah, Super Mario Advance 4 for the Game Boy Advance, you know, Mario 3, fantastic game, and it's great, like we got it on Game Boy Advance, we can take it anywhere, you know. But the only problem with Game Boy Advance is it eat the battery as well, so you have to bring a couple of spare batteries with you because Super Mario 3 is a long game. Now besides Mario I grew up playing as well, I also grew up playing some Sonic the Hedgehog as well, yeah, and of course the very first Sonic game I played was not on the Sega Genesis, Sega Mega Drive over here in Ireland, by the way, Europe, and for American fans called Sega Genesis, but I actually grew up playing the Sega Master System version. Now the kind of storyline to the Master System version is a bit different than the Sega Genesis version. The levels are a bit different as well. For example, you don't have Jungle Zone in the Sega Genesis version, but you have it in the Sega Master System version. The end boss is completely different as well, comparing the two of them together, and overall I think Sonic 1 for the Master System is a harder version than the 16-bit on the Sega Mega Drive. Now Sonic 1 on the Master System is also on the Game Gear as well, so Game Gear fans will actually recognize this game as well if you didn't have a Sega Master System, which I know it wasn't that popular over in America, and the Master System was more popular in I think Brazil, Australia, Europe, and I think that's it, yeah. But this version, I think Sonic 1, it's a good game. Master System version, by the way, it's a great game. It's a great version. I think it's my favorite version of Sonic. Maybe just because for nostalgic reasons, it's the first Sonic I ever played, so it does have like a special part of my heart that'll be always there as well. Sonic 1 on the Genesis Mega Drive, yeah, it's still a great title. It's like Sonic would be up there, like Mario's Nintendo, Sonic is Sega. Like cracky, I actually remember the very first Sega mascot was Alex Kidd, and then until Sonic arrived in 1991, Alex Kidd, like, you know, he just walked down that lonely dark road with his head down, crying and saying, that's it, I'm not the mascot anymore, because Sonic just took over. Considering that Alex Kidd America War was the very first game I ever played, so it's actually kind of cool. The very first game I played was actually the very first Sega mascot. That's cool. Anyway, yes, Sonic 1 on the Master System, guys, or just check out the game. Actually, the Game Gear version is harder because obviously the screen is smaller, so you don't actually see what's up above you as much as you would in the Master System version, but I would definitely recommend checking out Sonic 1, the 8-bit version on the Sega Master System right now. Do it now. Alright, next up as well is a bit of into simulation is Theme Park. I had Theme Park for the Super Nintendo, and then all of a sudden I saw, hang on a minute, there's actually a new version here. I remember I told you I branched out and I got a PlayStation 1 back in 1997. Well, Theme Park was actually released for the PlayStation 1 as well, and I was like, wow, okay, this is going to be interesting. The PlayStation 1 version, yeah, it does look amazing, you know. Not forgetting that cheat as well, you enter in Bovine and you can have access to all the rides in the game as well, unlimited money and everything as well, and wow, I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is cool. I always went bankrupt in these games, like the Super Nintendo version back in the day. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, hang on, okay, let's go into the bank, let's borrow like 50 grand, let's borrow 80 grand, and then I'd put all the rides there, I'd buy all the rides, put all the shops and everything, I put up all the trees, I put all the lakes and everything like that, and all of a sudden then the little dude at the very bottom will come up on the screen and say, okay, you're about to go bankrupt. And I was like, how? You know, I was just buying everything and anything. I was putting down these rides here, listening to all the cool music on all the rides as well. And all of a sudden, then my park just went bust and the whole thing closed down. And I was very, very sad because I lost the whole game. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm never playing this again. Then the PlayStation 1 game arrived and I saw a cheat where you can activate the cheat in, get unlimited rides and everything like that, unlimited money. I don't care now because I can just play the game to hold my heart's content and don't have to worry about going bankrupt. And it's on the PlayStation 1. The music was better and everything. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm a happy child right now. So yeah, Theme Park for the PlayStation 1. I definitely check it out if you haven't done so, because if you like all these fun, fair kind of simulation building things like that, you're going to love this game, especially the PlayStation 1 version as well, where you can actually build the roller coasters in this. Yeah, you can make them crash and stuff. I think we did that as well in Roller Coaster Tycoon as well a couple of years later. Hands up if you're guilty. I did as well. Alright, so next up we have Crash Bandicoot for the PlayStation 1. I know we're staying on PlayStation 1 for quite a bit there, but let's move on to Crash Bandicoot. This is the Game Boy Advance version as well. It holds up incredibly well, you know, for PlayStation 1, like I said earlier on, for like the Tekken franchise and then being poured over to the Game Boy Advance. And the same thing with Crash Bandicoot. Like, Crash Bandicoot is a big game as well. It's up there like Tomb Raider, a big game. Can you imagine I'm a Tomb Raider on such a small little handheld computer and it still holds up well? It's the same thing with Crash Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot, a fantastic game, but it's that darn bridge level always gets me. But besides that, game is amazing, and the Game Boy Advance version is absolutely incredible as well. And if you haven't checked out the Game Boy Advance version, where have you been? See, like, looking at these like PlayStation 1 games, it's like, wow, the graphics look amazing. And there's something about the Game Boy Advance graphics as well, like they're more colorful, they're more vibrant as well, and the sounds, like something about the Game Boy Advance sound I like. I know you have the Nintendo DS and the Nintendo 3DS, but I don't think they feel the same as the Game Boy Advance does. There's something about the Game Boy Advance is special. Next one, guys, Bubble Bobble. We all played it in the arcade, didn't we, back in the day, and we lost a lot of money because a lot of the stages can be very trolly, and yeah. Also on the NES as well, then we also have another version which is very, very rare and it doesn't get that much love, but I'm going to give it some love today, especially for the soundtrack alone. The version is the Commodore 64 version. Now, this looks completely different. The graphics does make it look that more nostalgic though, doesn't it? And looking at the game itself, it plays very, very well, but you have to have a lot of patience to wait for the game to officially load, because you know yourself, Commodore 64 games do take quite a while. But the music, guys, look at the music. Listen to the music in this version. The music is absolutely amazing in this version, I have to admit. And especially like the arcade version is, yeah, it's okay. The music is similar to the NES and the arcade version. You have the Sega Master System version as well. But today, like, I do want to talk about the Commodore 64 version in relation to its music. I think the music on the Commodore 64 version has like a special place there in a lot of people's hearts as well, especially Commodore 64 fans. If you say to somebody, do you remember Bubble Bobble? And they go, yeah, I remember Bubble Bobble, but I had it on the Commodore 64 because I prefer the music on it in the Commodore 64 than the arcade and the NES and the Master System versions. Yeah, Commodore 64 is a great system, but the only thing about the Commodore 64 is the waiting game. You know, do you remember them days where you get a game, you're like, wow, okay, I finally got this game. I've been after this game for so long. And then you have to wait another lifetime as well for the game to load. You're there, okay, scratching your head. You're like, when is this game gonna load and everything? You know, like, I'm kind of glad these times are gone where we don't have to wait a long time for just the game to load. And then, you know, you can start the game up and then you don't last long in the game and the game is game over on you and then you have to wait again, you know. Yeah, let's move on. Next up as well, guys, is Aladdin. Now, Aladdin is probably more popular on the Sega Genesis or the Sega Mega Drive. A lot of people don't know that was also on the Super Nintendo, and especially, like, I've done streams on Facebook, Kick, YouTube and that, right? And I have a lot of people coming into me, especially people from over in the States, and they said, hang on, I actually never knew Aladdin was on the Super Nintendo here. They're like, what version is this? And I said, this is Aladdin, Super Nintendo. Really? I never knew that was on the Super Nintendo, so I have to give this game some love here, especially the Super Nintendo version. The Genesis version, harder. It is harder. A million times harder. Super Nintendo version, yeah, it's more forgiving, I think. But one level in particular in Aladdin on the Super Nintendo version is that lava stage, and that lava stage gave me utter anxiety, and it still does today playing it. But it is a great version. If you haven't played Aladdin for the Super Nintendo, please do so. If you're a big fan of the Sega Genesis version, I think you're gonna like the Super Nintendo version as well. It plays amazing. It's a great version, and I would recommend you check it out as well. Okay, so and we're on to the final game, guys. Donkey Kong Country, the franchise on the Super Nintendo. It's a great franchise, okay? It's a great franchise. But a lot of people told me one thing, guys, and the thing was that if my parents couldn't afford the game back then, back in the 90s or whatever, they actually got me the Game Boy version, and they were like, hang on, this is not Donkey Kong Country. It was more like a version that some people call, if you can't afford to get Donkey Kong Country back in the 90s, 1994 to be exact, get the Game Boy version. The Game Boy version, you know what? you know what? Looking at this version right now, right? It does look different, okay? But it does play the same way. You just gotta get used to the controls again. But it is harder. I find Donkey Kong Land, that's what this is called, by the way. Donkey Kong Land, it is harder. The reason why it's harder because, like, obviously it's made for a smaller screen and the controls are not the same as the Super Nintendo version. It's sort of like downgrading, isn't it? But in a way, they actually done a good job with it too. If you just understand the controls, play around for a little bit, just get used to the controls, the game is pretty decent to play. Similar to playing like Adventure Island on the NES, and then you're going to play it on the Game Boy instead. It's going to be a bit different, but it is worth checking out because them Game Boy versions are amazing as well. Donkey Kong Land, yeah, I think it does deserve some love. It really does. I never see it streamed anywhere. It's always like 1, 2, and 3 for the Super Nintendo. Donkey Kong Land, yeah, check it out, guys. It is worth playing, but get ready to rage because you're gonna rage at this game, but you will get used to it in time. All right, so ladies and gents, let me know down in the comments down below what versions of games do you like. So in the list I just made today, okay, do you prefer these other versions that I mentioned, or do you actually just prefer the originals like Tekken on the PlayStation 1? Do you prefer that over Tekken Advance or something like that as well? And even games I didn't mention as well, I probably missed a bunch of them as well, but you know, just let me know what games in particular that you like but you prefer the other version as well. Give me the other version on the system as well, that's far as well, and I'll check it out as well, have a look at it. Meanwhile, guys, thank you ever so much for being here. Thank you for watching the video as well, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do click on subscribe and click on the bell as well to be notified whenever I do upload a new video, and also when I do go live as well to do a live game stream as well. Thank you once again, guys, and have yourself an awesome day. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.